Well, the Eagles may have upset a lot of people last week with the Haason Reddick trade that netted very little in return, but see why Howie Roseman and company could already be preparing to get his replacement this month. Plus, Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts were spotted working out together, but you need to hear what Nick Sirianni's new plan is for number 26. And Jason Kelce, he's preparing to announce his next move. I'm Thomas Mott. This is the Thomas Mott Show. Okay, so a lot has happened since I was in Europe this past week, including Haason Reddick getting traded, the top three in charge meeting with the media, and lots of draft and free agency speculation. But let me pause and be the last to wish you and your family a very happy Easter weekend, which thankfully was not like the one 14 years ago, whenever the Eagles traded quarterback Donovan McNabb on Easter Sunday, again 14 years ago, to the then Washington Redskins for a second-round draft pick and a fourth-round pick, which would eventually become Nate Allen, Casey Matthews, and D'Amico Ryans. It's really crazy to believe that Philly would trade arguably their most successful quarterback in franchise history to a division rival, but hey, the Birds knew McNabb's magic was basically over, and they did seemingly win that trade 14 years later. Of course, the latest NFC East interdivision superstar movement was Saquon Barkley leaving the Giants to come to Philadelphia, and it looks like we have our first picture of our new RB1 working out with QB1 via Saquon Barkley's Instagram page. Now, there's no word yet on if the workout was just a massive competition to see who could squat the most, but I do love the fact that Saquon is already getting reps in with QB1, Jalen Hurts, presumably other Eagles teammates this offseason. Saquon's such a unique talent, right? He's not just a running back. He's really a weapon. The same mold of Christian McCaffrey going to the San Francisco 49ers a couple of years ago. But the main question for me is, how are you going to unlock him? The Giants never really could figure things out, despite his success up there with New York. But if Philadelphia can put the right pieces in place around him in a very, very smart and nuanced offense, 26 could be in for a massive, massive year. And for what it's worth, obviously Sirianni and Kellen Moore are the two main people tasked with getting the most out of Saquon Barkley. And Sirianni, he spoke to building an offensive system that fits Barkley's talents last week.
Yeah, amazing thing. Good players fit well into schemes. And he's obviously a really good player. We're really excited to have him. The style of play that he brings, the leadership that he brings. And so, however, guys like that, however you use them, they're gonna do a good job. And so we're obviously working on the ways that we're gonna use them now. Our offensive staff's working hard at that, and just really excited to have him add a player of his caliber to our team. You know, a couple years ago when we added AJ, just did a lot of work of, hey, what does AJ do well? You know, obviously you do that going in, then you even look at it even more after you get them. What does AJ do well? How can we use them? And it's been a similar process here with Saquon.
Now, it does look like we'll get our first look at Saquon with all the rest of the Eagles teammates installing that new-look offense during an expanded offseason workout program in Philadelphia that includes now 7 OTAs in May and 3 days of mandatory minicamps this June, something Sirianni has avoided since coming to Philadelphia to preserve wear and tear, blah, blah, blah. But when you have new coaches and a bunch of new faces coming in, plus obviously brand new schemes and systems, it makes a lot of sense that you need a little extra time to install everything this offseason. Now, speaking of updates, you might have noticed on this video, I've officially rolled out a brand new thumbnail, which we're going to be using going forward, unless I go ahead and change it again. Unfortunately, I was kind of forced to make a brand new refresh because there are certain people on the internet who have slowly decided to copy every single aspect of my show, culminating in what is basically a carbon copy of my thumbnail that is almost impossible to distinguish side by side. I mean, goodness gracious. And while some people out there might say this is insane, I wanted to make sure I took the time to update the thumbnail. That way you didn't click on a video thinking it was mine, only to see a very blurry copycat version of it. Now, something that was actually insane was Philadelphia trading Haason Reddick to the New York Jets for a 2026 third-round pick that could become, I guess, a second this past Friday. And while I get it, there's obviously a lot of outrage, and rightfully so, because 2026 is really far away to get a return for what is a top 5 pass rusher. Philadelphia, they really had no choice. Like, Reddick was not going to play on his current deal, making only $14.5 million, grossly underpaid, and obviously Howie trying to trade him, obviously tried to find a second-round draft pick or a third-round draft pick in this year's draft, 2024, but to no avail, no other GMs wanted to bite. And I'm not going to sit here and try and convince you, oh, the Eagles don't need Haason Reddick, or Reddick really wasn't that good. They're going to be just fine. Clearly, having Reddick on Philadelphia would have been a plus this year. But if you look at the stats and you look at the rest of the players around him, I think the Eagles' defensive line is going to be just fine. I mean, he did have 11 sacks last year, but that came in only 8 games. Like, that's 9 games in 2023 where Reddick did not register a sack at all, especially towards the latter half of 2023. Philly obviously saves $14.5 million as well, which could be spent elsewhere on defense. We'll talk more about who here in just a second. Add in the fact that Josh Sweat is coming back, Nolan Smith enters year 2, and Bryce Huff, he was added, had double-digit sacks last year. This defensive line is not terrible without Haason Reddick. Plus, let's be real, second to quarterback, it's important, yes, but it's not everything. The Eagles' 2027 edge rushers combined for only 22.5 sacks, and BG was their leading sacker at 9.5 in 2017. And this doesn't mean Philadelphia's defensive line is set and they're not going to add anybody else. Clearly, Howie Roseman is gearing up for another move to improve the defensive line, whether that's April, at the end of April, now that we're in April, for a pass rusher in the draft, or going out to free agency and picking up the scraps at edge rusher, they're going to go get somebody else. And let's be honest, just because Bryce Huff is young and relatively unproven, he still had an insane amount of sacks last year, and why couldn't he be the real Reddick replacement and do exactly what Haason has done in Philadelphia the past couple of years, but at a much cheaper cost and way, way younger, just like Hugh Douglas pointed out on 94 WIP a little bit earlier today.
I know the 10 sacks are one of those things that people look at and be like, that production is not going to be, duplicated or anything like that. I'm going to tell you like this, man. In a small sampling size, I think Bryce Huff has the potential of being a better pass rusher. And I know people look at me and they're like, "Oh man, you're crazy, Haason." Man, go look at his rushes compared to Haason Reddick rushes. And the reason why I feel that way because he's more of a physical rusher. He has, to me, more of an ability to strike fear in the heart of a tackle and beat a tackle in a one-on-one situation than Haason Reddick. Now, Haason Reddick is fast. There's no question about that, and he beats a lot of people off the corner. But the physicality that Bryce plays with, I really like, and I think that's what's missing in this game today.
Still, even if Huff isn't a 15-plus sack a year sort of guy, there are still other options in both free agency and the draft. Now, when it comes to the draft 3 weeks from now, the most likely option is Penn State defensive end Chop Robinson, who, looky here, met with the Eagles for a top 30 draft visit, according to a report this past week. Now, Robinson is a top 5 pass rusher in this draft, according to PFF. He's not 1 or 2 like Jared Verse or Dallas Turner, but he still will be there at number 22 and maybe even early in round 2 if Philadelphia wanted to trade up to grab him. And while Chop doesn't immediately replace Reddick's production, I'm not saying that, he did have an unbelievable combine, running the fastest 40-yard dash, had the fastest 10-yard split, and the longest broad jump of all edge rushers at this year's combine. I think if you put Robinson or another pass rusher on this Eagle defensive line, a lot of Eagle fans will calm back down on this idea that, they're going to get 0 sacks because Reddick is now gone. Now, of course, the other option, or I guess you could do this with drafting a pass rusher, is go to free agency and sign someone like Isaiah Simmons as a solid depth piece to go ahead and help out at getting to the quarterback. Now, the stat sheet would obviously show you 1 sack for Simmons with the Giants this past year. That's more because they moved him to this hybrid box safety, linebacker, sort of really weird position group. Didn't really work, and Philly could obviously turn him back into more of an edge rusher under Vic Fangio's scheme and hope that him being 26 years old means he has a lot left in the tank to find that kind of second life during his NFL season in Midnight Green. The truth is, Philadelphia was never going to let Haason Reddick leave without having a tried, true, and tested plan behind him, whether it was Bryce Huff, or it's Bryce Huff plus Chop Robinson, or it's going to get Isaiah Simmons. They have a plan in place, and if you trust Howie Roseman to make a lot of good moves, Saquon Barkley, for instance, at the beginning of free agency, add in CJ Gardner-Johnson, Bryce Huff, you got to believe that getting rid of Haason Reddick is still a good move by a GM that we all trust and need to just calm down a little bit with the outrage of the pick being in 2026. Now, in some other defensive news, Philadelphia made an interesting move by extending Safety Reed Blakenship, paying him a fully guaranteed $3.95 million over the next 2 years, according to Mark Garofalo. He can earn another $1.375 million with playtime and, of course, Pro Bowl escalators, as you see here. Honestly, this is a solid move. One, if Reed Blakenship goes and pops in 2024, they'll still have him on a very cheap deal going into 2025. And two, Reed basically earned this. He was good last year. Was he great? No. Was he a top 15 safety in the league? No. But is he productive in the Eagles' defense? Yes. And CJ Gardner-Johnson being next to him only elevate his status going forward until Sidney Brown hopefully takes over post-ACL injury? Well, that's going to be remain to be seen. Now, we weren't outraged whenever Jason Kelce retired a couple of weeks ago. We were all very, very sad, but it looks like he will announce his next move coming up very, very soon, and maybe ESPN is the leader in the clubhouse to get the New Heights podcast started, join the Monday Night Football crew in 2024. According to this report by The Athletic saying, quote, ESPN is planning another Monday Night Football pregame shakeup, according to executives with knowledge of the network's plans. A year after a complete makeover of the set under the stewardship of Scott Van Pelt, Robert Griffin III's spot is in jeopardy, while the network is aggressively pursuing retired Philadelphia Eagles center Jason Kelce for Monday nights. I can only imagine how much Kelce is going to command from one of these TV networks. Like, he obviously is great on camera. He's proven that the past couple of years. He has the fame, and not just Taylor Swift, but just being Jason Kelce comes with a lot of fame and the charisma to draw the eyeballs to the networks like ESPN or Amazon or NBC or wherever he wants to go. I just hope that it officially happens and that we can still get to see a lot of number 62 on our TV screens during football season, even if he's not going to be under center in midnight green. Now, if you're wondering where I've been, I was in Europe this past week with my dad and my grandpa, and we went all over and really, I would say, relaxing trip overall, despite having, I think, 8 total flights as we were going from country to country to country. But it's good to be back, and it's good to be back with you guys covering what's going to be a very interesting April as we march closer and closer to the NFL draft. Think about it. Thursday, this coming Thursday, is 3 weeks until round 1. 3 weeks until Philadelphia is on the clock at number 22, and while they're going to obviously make a selection in round 1, I don't think it's going to be at 22. I think they're going to trade up for somebody, and my goal is to figure out who that is and cover all the latest news, reports, and rumors that are going to obviously come as we march closer and closer to the NFL draft. Be sure to subscribe and help us get closer and closer to 50,000 subs. We're almost there. If we can hit it before the draft, it's going to make it even more exciting as myself and Josh Davis will be live on draft night. Can't wait to go ahead and cover that. I'm Thomas Mott. This has been The Thomas Mott Show.